Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Strategies for Finding Success with a Community Eligibility Provision. My name is Emily Pia, and I'm a program manager on No Kid Hungry's Center for Best Practices team. I'm so excited to be joined by my friend and colleague, Donna Martin, today. She is a school nutrition director in Burke County, Georgia, and she's been a director for 30 years. So she has a ton of experience, and she's been implementing CEP since it's first been available in Georgia. So I'll have her introduce herself in a second, but I do want to mention that I'm managing the back end of the webinar as well today. So if you have any technical difficulties or audio issues as it relates to the webinar, go ahead and send me a message in the chat box or the question box, and I'll be able to get to those. I also want to mention that I will be sending out a copy of the webinar recording, the slide deck, and our companion resource for today's webinar afterwards. And I'll also be sending a follow-up survey. Love to hear what you think about today's content and this new 30-minute format that we're trying. And so, again, I am so happy to be on the phone today with Donna Martin, and I'm excited for her to introduce herself. So, Donna?
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Emily. I'm so excited about this topic today. We love CEP in our district, and just to share with you a little bit about our district, it's a very rural district. It's very large in terms of mileage. It's 836 square miles, but we only have about 4,300 students. About 85% of our students are bused to school each day, and our kids get on the bus very early in the morning, like at 6:15 in the morning. And sometimes they don't get home until 7:30 at night if they participate in our after-school program. So we choose to operate every single program that USDA offers to ensure our students are always ready to learn all year long, because hunger does not take a vacation in the summer. We do breakfast in the classroom at our elementary schools, grab-and-go breakfast at our middle school, and we participate in the fresh fruit and vegetable grant in all of our elementary schools, and we do after-school at-risk meal snacks. We operate the supper program in all of our schools that provide any kind of after-school programming, and we do summer meals in our county. In the summer, we have 15 buses that go out all over our county to serve our kids that get on the bus. They eat and they go home. So our breakfast participation rate is over 75%, and lunch participation is over 86%. And so this is our 6-year operating CEP, and our rate's 100%.
Great. Thanks so much, Donna. I'm really excited for you to all hear all of the wonderful strategies that Donna uses to improve her CEP program, and I know you're really going to like today's content. So our agenda for today, we're going to go over some CEP basics, and we're also going to cover strategies for increasing ISPs. Thank you so much to all of you who submitted challenges you have related to implementing CEP ahead of the webinar. A lot of you mentioned increasing your ISP and making sure you're capturing all of those students who are directly certified for free school meals. We'll be talking about that a lot today. We'll also be covering strategies for maximizing participation, managing program costs, and generating additional revenue. And we will have some time for some Q&A at the end. So please go ahead and send any questions that you have throughout today's webinar in the question box on the right-hand side of your screen, and we'll get to those at the end. So I also want to highlight a companion resource that we have to this webinar, and Donna and I worked on this together. It's named after the webinar as well, Strategies for Finding Success with CEP. This is also in the handout section of the webinar control panel on the right-hand side of your screen, so you can access it now. Donna and I won't be able to go into all of the strategies that we have listed in this resource, but there are a ton there, so I really encourage you in your free time to check those out. And it's also featured on our brand new No Kid Hungry Resource Center at that link below. So check out our new resource center where we have tons of resources related to the federal child nutrition program. Okay, so let's dive in. What is CEP? The Community Eligibility Provision is a school meal funding option that enables high-need schools to provide breakfast and lunch to all students at no cost to them. And so this reduces the stigma that students may face in participating in school meals programs, and schools then often see increased participation because school breakfast and lunch is free for all students under CEP. CEP is also often described as the antidote to school lunch debt. We know there's been lots of press nationally around school lunch debt. And under CEP, because you're not charging students for the meals that they're consuming, you don't have to worry about school lunch debt. Decreased administrative burden is also a huge selling point to CEP. School nutrition departments don't have to send out school meals applications anymore. And as Donna reminded me, this is also a huge selling point for teachers. Teachers don't have to touch school meals applications under CEP. And so this frees up a lot of staff time. You know, you don't have to distribute, collect, enter school meals benefit forms. You don't have to track down students or families who haven't yet turned them in. This is a really great aspect of the community eligibility provision. And again, schools often see increased participation as a result of not charging students. So eligible schools or group of schools are eligible if they have an identified student percentage of 40% or more. And we're going to go into on the next slide what that identified student percentage is and how to capture all of the students that are eligible to be certified for free school meals in that ISP. But know that you have to have an ISP of 40% or more to operate. Grouping does allow for some schools to be below that 40% threshold. So as long as the weighted average of a group of schools who are implementing CEP together is at least 40%, they can implement. We're not going to go into too much different grouping scenarios, but I will, in the copy of the slides that I send out some example calculations that you can look at, and you can always feel free to reach out to myself after the webinar, and we can talk about what ideal grouping scenarios for your district might look like. The other thing to know is CEP operates on a 4-year cycle, and so once you establish CEP and establish that ISP, you're good for all 4 years. And let's talk about what that ISP is. So the identified student percentage is the percentage of students in your school that are categorically eligible for free school meals. And that is by their participation or a household member's participation in the following programs. So there's SNAP, TANF, FDIPR, or the Food Distribution Program on Indian Reservations, and Medicaid. So what's important to know about these first few groups of programs that make kids directly eligible for free school meals and thus can be included in the ISP, these data sets also confer eligibility on other students in that household. So, for example, if Emily Pia is in 3rd grade and my family is on SNAP and I show up on the direct certification list for SNAP, I can be included in the identified student percentage. And then any brothers, sisters, cousins who are also living at my same address can also be included in the direct certification or in the identified student percentage, even if they don't show up as participating in SNAP themselves on those lists that you receive from your state agencies. So that's important to know, and really important to know in maximizing your identified student percentage, which we're going to talk about household eligibility later, but wanted to highlight why I bucketed these two groups out on the slide. And so the second group there, children are also categorically eligible if they themselves are in foster care, homeless, in Head Start or early Head Start, or are migrants. And so, again, these categories do not confer eligibility on other students in the household. So if that same Emily Pia in 3rd grade is not on SNAP and I have a younger sibling in Head Start, that doesn't confer eligibility for me. And so that's the difference between those two groups. Medicaid is on this slide. There are 12 states who are participating in the USDA's Medicaid demonstration project. And so in those states, Medicaid is also a program that students, that confers eligibility and allows students to be included in that identified student percentage. So these are those means tested programs. And then under CEP, your ISP is used to determine your reimbursement rate. And so there are two categories of reimbursement under CEP, free and paid. It effectively eliminates that reduced price category. And the free reimbursement rate is your identified student percentage times 1.6. And so you can see in the chart below, if you're just at that threshold of eligibility for CEP and your ISP is 40%, multiplied by 1.6, 64% of the meals that you served can be claimed for reimbursement at that federal free rate. And so for lunch, that's about $3.50. So 64% of the meals that you serve, you're only reporting the total meals that you've served, not by fee category. 64% would be reimbursed at that free rate, and then the remainder would be reimbursed at that paid rate. So 100% minus your ISP times 1.6. We refer to this magic ISP of 62.5% because if you can get your ISP up to 62.5% multiplied by 1.6, 100% of the meals that you serve are reimbursed at that federal free rate. And so it's really, really important under CEP to make it as financially viable for your school as possible to raise that ISP and capture as many students as you can on those direct certification lists, which we are going to go into in a second. All right, so strategies for increasing your ISP. First,
go ahead.
Donna, I'll cover the first one, and then
go ahead.
You can give examples. So the first thing you need to do is you have to find out what student data your state includes in their direct certification system. So again, referring back to that slide of all of the categories that make you categorically eligible for free school meals and thus included in the identified student percentage, check with your state agency if you don't already know to see, one, what data is included, then figure out what data is not included, and ask them where you can find that data. So for example, if your school district, you have a lot of students who are Native American and might be participating in the food distribution program on Indian reservations, but you find out that that data is not included in your direct certification system on the list that you receive from the state agency, ask your state agency person where you can find that data, because you don't want students who can be included in the identified student percentage to go missing on those lists. Every student that you certify gives you a chance to increase that ISP and again, bring in more revenue. And so ask your state agency, ask other school districts in your state where you can find data that you know is not included in your direct certification system by your state. Donna, could you tell me a little bit about how you capture homeless students and migrant students and foster care students and who you work with to find that data?
Right. So I think, the main thing when you're working on your ISP is that you've got to get support from administration, Emily. They need to really understand what's involved in doing this and what's at stake. And, everybody wants to be able to feed the kids at no charge, district-wide or in the school. And so when you explain to them what you're trying to do and why you're collecting this information and why you need to be talking to the social worker and why you need to be talking to the student information person, then you're going to get a lot more support from all of them as you get ready to do this. So, we get a list from our state department. They upload lists into our portal. And once they upload lists, then we actually take our list and match all those things up. And so that's where we start with doing that before we actually talk to our social workers and homeless liaisons and stuff. But we actually get a list from our school system, we upload it, and we match what they send us down. And so essentially most of the students just match if their birth dates and their names and their addresses and everything match perfectly, then we're good to go. But then a lot of the kids don't match perfectly, because what happens is, like, my name might be Donna Martin on the DC list, but my parents had me at school, they registered me as Donna Johnson, and so my name changed, and so the lists don't match. So we have a list of potential matches, and we've got to go back and double check every single potential match to see if Donna Johnson and Donna Martin are the same, and then we can approve them. So once we go back through all the quick matches and then the potential matches, then we reach out to our social workers and they can help us. Sometimes we need to reach out to the families to get more information, and they'll actually go out and look up if we have some students that we think might qualify for meals and are not on our list. If it's somebody that our managers have identified or our teachers identify, then we'll send the social workers out and they'll work with those families. We also, in terms of, we get a homeless list every month from our Title I director, and every single month she shares that with us so we can make sure that we match all of our homeless kids. And so we just work really, really closely with every single person and they really do understand what this means for our district, because not only does it mean that the kids eat free, it means funding for Title I, it means funding for technology and things in those areas. So just getting that support is really, really huge.
Those are great strategies. So if you don't know who some of these key folks that Donna has been mentioning are in your school district, I encourage you to reach out and find those social workers and homeless liaisons to make sure that you are capturing those students. And, you know, we hear school districts who have a regular data sharing agreement with those departments in their schools. And so, you know, if the homeless liaison every month sends any new students who end up on their lists, that way you can continue to raise your ISP, because any additional student that you recognize, even after establishing CEP and establishing your ISP at the beginning of your 4-year cycle, if you are able to find more students throughout the year at any time throughout your 4-year cycle, each student you find is eligible for that full year. So if Emily Pia is on SNAP for only a month, and I miss that month that she's on SNAP, I miss that student being included in my ISP. But if I can capture, because I'm regularly checking the direct certification list, regularly checking in with these other providers of data like the social workers, if I can find her in that month that she is on SNAP, then I'm able to potentially increase my ISP that year and then lock in a new 4-year CEP cycle. So you can work with your state agency to start a new 4-year CEP cycle if you can demonstrate an increase in your ISP. And so the last best practice on here, which I know that every system in every state is different, and so I do want to mention, you know, some states have really sophisticated direct certification systems that update every 24 hours and include all of this data and apply extended eligibility that make it really easy to conduct direct certification and capture all of those additional students often. And some direct certification systems, you know, you're just getting lists of students who are participating in these programs, and you have to, you know, manually adjudicate each one of those and figure out whether they're going to be included in your ISP. Regardless of your system, find what balance works for you and how often that you can conduct direct certification so that you're not missing any of those students. Really important, especially if you can, you know, if you can increase your ISP and start a new 4-year cycle, that extends your time that you're at that higher ISP. But if you only do direct certification at the beginning really intensively of your CEP cycle, at the end of your 4-year cycle, you might be surprised that your ISP has fallen a lot and maybe missed out on an opportunity to lock in a new 4-year cycle at a higher rate earlier on. So
you want me to talk about
go ahead, Donna.
Go back and talk about extending eligibility. I'm sorry. I want to talk about how we do that. So we get a list from our person here that does all our student information, and she gives us a list, and it's in an Excel spreadsheet, and we're able to sort that. So we're able to sort it by address, and so we can see if there's 2 or 3 or 4 people living at an address. We can go back and double check if any of them are on SNAP or TANF, and then we double check to make sure that everybody else in the household is already qualified, and if they're not, we automatically qualify them. So we pick up a lot of kids that way by living in the household. And then we do the same thing by double checking by guardian name. So if somebody in the house under the same guardian name is receiving SNAP or TANF, and so other people that belong to that same guardian do not receive SNAP and TANF, we're able to extend eligibility to all of those. So by being able to get that list from your student information person and sorting it through Excel, we are able to really increase our numbers. And one of the things we do is work with our student information system to try and standardize things, like when you standardize addresses, if you're talking about route and you spell it R-O-U-T-E or you spell it R-T, things don't match up as well. So we've really worked this real hard with our student information people, trying to get them to use standardized addresses so that when we pull it from the Excel spreadsheet, everything groups together. Spelling names correctly of guardians, making sure it's first name, last name, not last name, first name in one school, so that it gets real confusing and you can't find those matches. So that's where it's real important to get that support, is to make sure that those lists are consistent and you can find those extended matches and extend the eligibility.
Thank you so much, Donna. I'm glad that you caught that we jumped over that bullet point. Extended eligibility, household eligibility, very important. Okay, so let's get to the fun stuff, feeding kids. Donna, tell me how you increase participation.
Well, I think one of the biggest ways is you've got to look at every single program. But I think when you look at most school districts, breakfast is the program that they can do the best to increase participation. So, you know, our goal is always 100% participation in all of our schools at breakfast and lunch. So we're always trying to do that. So what we know is the lowest form of participation at breakfast is if you have breakfast in the cafeteria, and usually you only get about 50% participation. But if you do some things like implementing breakfast after the bell, you can increase your participation significantly. So the numbers for breakfast in the classroom, which we do in our elementary nationwide, is 88%. If you do grab and go, the percentages are 59%. And if you do second chance after the bell, it's 58%. So I make sure in all of my schools that I've increased breakfast participation by offering all of these after the bell. And I think there's advantages and disadvantages to each one of these options. But I think one of the advantages is that kids do not always feel comfortable coming down to the breakfast, to the cafeteria in the morning. It's always rushed and people are yelling at them, telling them to hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. And so they really love the options of going to the classroom and having breakfast where they have more time. And if the buses are late, they can always make sure they can get there and eat. And it's a much more calming environment. So I think anytime you can implement breakfast in the classroom, grab and go, and second chance breakfast, you can increase participation significantly. And our goal is to get to as close to 100%. I think adding points of service, so like when you do grab and go, you can offer a breakfast cart at every single door as you come into the school or on all your halls. So making sure there's enough time for the kids to have access and they're not hurried. And at lunchtime, we have added points of service by adding a vending machine so that the kids can come up and get a reimbursable meal out of the vending machine, and that has increased our participation at lunch. And I think the one thing about breakfast is speeding it up. If you're doing CEP, you can do clickers, and you don't have to have the kids put their names in to the point of sale, which slows things down. So I think that has helped us a lot by doing that. And then the other thing is we've been really talking to our students about what it is they like for breakfast. So we do a really good job of getting feedback from them. They are our customers, and sometimes as adults, we think we like one thing and we find out the kids like other things. So one of the things we did this year is we started offering breakfast smoothies at our middle school and high school, and we increased participation by 200 kids at our high school and 100 kids at our middle school. So we really track, you can see on the screen, there's a white sheet of paper. We track on all our lines what our participation is by the percentage of kids picking up the hot item, picking up the smoothie, picking up the cereal, and we really know like that pizza sticks are our favorite item that the kids, and on days we do pizza sticks, we increase participation. And anytime you can increase participation, you can increase your money coming in, and it's very little extra time at breakfast to do any of these after the bell implementations. And it's hard to get it started, but once you get it started, the teachers always love it and the principals always love it if you can just convince them to try it.
Thank you so much, Donna. These are all pictures, I want to say, from Donna's school, which we had the pleasure of going to visit. And I can say firsthand that the smoothies were a huge hit. So if that's something that you're considering, Donna can talk a little bit about that in the Q&A. Let's get to managing program costs. And I'd love, Donna, for you to share about how you employ students to work in the school nutrition program and how that benefits them and how it benefits your program financially. And you know, just would love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, this is one of the best things we have done, Emily. It is so exciting. So we were struggling a little bit with our labor costs, and you know, the cost of healthcare have gone up so much, and our salaries have increased, which is great, but it made us really struggle financially in our school district. So we were having a need at lunch to have an increased number of employees at lunch because we were trying to run all these lines and offer all these options. And so we had the brainstorm to hire some of our high school students. And this has been the best thing that we have ever done. Number one, these students are less expensive than our employees, and you don't have to pay any benefits. You don't have to have uniforms. You don't have to you don't have to pay them for holidays and things like that. So we pay just $7.50 an hour for our high school students to work for us. And they don't really want to work full time. They're perfectly comfortable working just part-time, 3 or 4 hours a day at the peak times when we need them to run our registers or work in the dish room. And what I love about the students is they're young, they have strong backs, and they're healthy, and they don't go to a lot of doctor's appointments, and they're there all the time. And they don't ever have to stay home with sick children, which is a bonus. And they also become huge supporters of our program because they're coming and they see how hard it is, how hard our job is. And what they love about working for us is typically a lot of them were working at fast food restaurants, and they'd have to work nights and weekends and holidays, and they're on the same schedule as our schools. So they love that they have Friday nights off to go to football games, and they don't have to work weekends and holidays. And as you look in these pictures in the bottom left-hand corner, we employ special needs students. So these are some of our kids that are challenged, and they work through the school employs them, and they pay them like $3.25 an hour, and they work cleaning tables and work in our dish rooms, and it's like a training program for them. And what's great about this program is then we have actually hired some of these students when they've graduated from high school in our programs, but they've been able to go out and get jobs in fast food restaurants, which has been a great career training ground for them. So our high school students have been a real bonus for us. And I love just getting their feedback on what they like and don't like about school breakfast and school lunch, and getting them to share their ideas. So it's been a great program for us.
Thank you. I think we are running short on time, so this is our last slide here. I'd love, Donna, for you to talk about, Donna is a school nutrition expert, and she operates every single federal child nutrition program that she is eligible to do. And so in terms of generating additional revenue, she is the person to talk about it. So Donna, if you want to talk about one or two of the strategies here.
Certainly during after school supper meals is one of the best financial decisions you can make, because you can make a lot of money if you can do supper meals. It's not very expensive. You have your staff already on board and already there, and you don't have to provide uniforms or extra fringe benefits for them. And summer meals, if you can work it out in your school district, that's the most underserved program, and it's an opportunity to feed the kids and also give your employees more labor hours. And so if you can work that out, that is great. But I always encourage you to do things like sell a la carte items, make sure you cater banquets, anything that the schools are doing. Reach out to civics clubs and have them come in and have their luncheons. I know some of people that eat in our schools say it's the best new restaurant they've ever found, because we produce really, really good meals. And make sure you always tell them if people are going on a field trip that you can provide meals for the field trip, and they don't have to pay to eat at a fast food restaurant, that you can provide meals for them. So after school snacks are a great way to increase revenue. They're very inexpensive. They don't require a lot of labor. So I think just start thinking outside the box and offering any program that you can, but concentrating on supper and summer and field trips and a la carte and doing some catering, I think would bring in a lot of money for your program.
And those strategies are especially important for schools that are at lower ISPs. So really getting creative about where you can bring in extra money to make sure your program is sustainable financially will be a big benefit. So we have some questions here, Donna. And first, I do want to mention someone sent in, which thank you so much to the person who chatted this in, that some states do still require students or schools to put in student names for the meals that they claim. And so in that, this state, for example, is Arkansas. So in Arkansas, they can't use a clicker to move students through faster. Okay. Yeah, so definitely check with your state agency, although they might have stricter regulations in each state. We've got a couple of questions about the vending machines. Can you talk, Donna, about how the vending machines work?
Yeah, I love the vending machines. We put our packaged salads in them, and we put sandwiches in them, and we put Lunchables in them that we make ourselves. We package and seal up the food and put it in there, and the kids think it's store-bought. And they come up and they put their number in, and it allows them to pick the meal that they want, and the door opens. It keeps the food refrigerated, and you can put them any place on campus, and they hold about 85 meals. It's wonderful. You can operate them at breakfast or at lunch, and our kids really do like them, and it just gives you another line. A lot of kids don't want a hot meal. They just want something cold and quick at lunch, and our adults love the salads and wraps and things that we put in our vending machines. So it's really a good option.
Thank you. And then the last question we have here is that only students who contribute to the ISP who can eat the meals under CEP, and no, it's all students. Students who are directly certified are helping you claim are helping you establish that ISP, which locks in your reimbursement rate, but all students in CEP schools eat breakfast and lunch at no cost to them. So thank you for your questions. I do have a poll for those of you who are still on the line. We've gone a little bit over time, but I would love to know, did you like the 30-minute webinar format today, or would you prefer that being an hour? So if you could tell me and give me feedback for the future, I'd love to hear that, and we'll select responses for another 30 seconds here. Things are getting towards a split. It started out 80% like the 30-minute webinar, and now it looks like about 60% like the 30-minute webinar, and about 40% prefer 60 minutes. So, I'm not sure what to do with that one. We're now at 54:46. All right. Well, I'll have to think a little more on that. Maybe we continue to offer a little bit of both. Okay, and then I just want to highlight again, you have in the handout section of this webinar, and I'm going to send out as follow-up the webinar slides and that resource, strategies for finding success with CEP. I'll have some additional resources included in the follow-up, so you can click those. And I know a couple of you had questions that unfortunately we didn't have time to get to about Title I. There's a great resource, Understanding the Relationship Between Community Eligibility and Title I Funding, that FRAC put together. I encourage you to check that out. And that Urban Institute link there, Measuring Student Poverty, is new, and it tells you state by state information about Title I and community eligibility, what each state's process looks like. So check out those resources. Again, if you have any questions that we didn't get to today, please go ahead and send me an email. My name is Emily Pia, and so my email address is epia@strengths.org. We'd love to hear from you, or if you have best practices that we should be sharing in future webinars, let me know. Please do fill out the survey in our follow-up, and thank you just so much for attending, and huge thank you to Donna for joining us and sharing her expertise today.
Thank you.
All right, have a great day and have a great holiday, everyone.